Hi, welcome to the Smart Enough podcast. I'm your host, Vandy.
And I'm Danny.
And today, you introduce AJ now. Remember?
No, you're going to talk about your name.
Oh, you're right. You're so right.
This is why we don't do the script thing.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we're totally off book, you guys. We're so excited.
Listen, I'm not messing up the script this time.
Right.
Right.
You're right. You're right.
There we go.
Okay, so Vandy, for my friends at home who don't understand the nickname, it's a spinoff of my last name.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like that it rhymes with Danny.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Vandy and Danny.
And then we have AJ on the ones and twos. He's the production manager. Is that the official name?
Oh, that sounds way better than what I came up with.
You can
production
have
manager.
you can have that title if you want it.
Thank you so
It
much.
sounds really good.
It does.
He makes it sound official.
And so this is a weekly podcast designed to engage and inspire deep and critical thinkers to participate in constructive conversation and to bring a little compassion and hopefully a few laughs to public discourse.
And while we might not be smart enough to know everything, I got it.
We're smart enough to grow from conversation. And I'm saying grow from conversation instead of have conversation this time.
Right.
Because anyone can have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can say, hey, let's go to McDonald's. And you can say, sure. And then we go. But it's
there's no growth.
No growth in that. So this is hopefully promoting conversations that you grow from, conversations that make you think and expand your consciousness and just kind of make you a better person.
Cool. Well, our topic today is hello from the other side. We are discussing touchy subjects with people who think differently from us.
Yes, we are.
So,
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give a question, a critical thinking question.
We've got 3 this time. We decided we had like 10 last time.
Yeah,
but
which is too
we've
much.
limited it to 3.
It
So
sounded like a lecture.
It did. What are the 3 this time?
Well, I'm gonna do it one at a time.
What do you mean?
So I'm gonna read a question and then you kind of give me a response.
Just read all 3.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll read all 3. All right. Our first question is: how do you communicate with Trump supporters? How do you let them know that how their decisions affect you without disengaging them? And how do you respect the needs and wants of other people if they don't respect yours? And should you respect them?
Awesome. And later on in the episode, we're going to bring in Ian Gary. He's a comedian and actor here in Los Angeles, and I'm also obsessed with him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of knocking out my
Your
obsession already very early.
Goodness.
But I'm not going to use him as my obsession, but we are going to have him on to kind of, he's someone who engages actively and regularly with Trump supporters and people who think differently. And he's someone who is very just critical of politics in general, like every side, which I think is important.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's dive right into how our first question, which is how do you talk to people who think differently than you? And in this case, this podcast isn't necessarily designed for Trump supporters. If you're listening, I mean, welcome. But so something that I personally learned in communication school. Yes.
Not again.
I know.
We can't. We can't.
I think that
it's one class.
I know.
Everyone took communications.
I know. But it was so good. I think everyone at home who is over the age of 21 should take a shot every time I mention it. But
take a shot.
But there was this theory. Okay, stick with me. There was this theory that, people have opinions on a spectrum of whatever that spectrum is. So say if you're like a deep Republican, you're a 1, and if you're a deep Democrat, you're a 10. And if you're trying to convince a 1 to become a 10, you don't argue at a 10.
Absolutely.
You don't give the argument of a 10. You give the argument of a 2 to like move them a little closer to center. And then you have another conversation moving them to a 3. And then another conversation moving them to a 4. And then, or, if you're a Republican talking to a Democrat, 9, 8, 7,
Gotcha.
Whatever it is, moving them to the center. And that may take more conversations than just 10 conversations, obviously, because will take much
true.
more than that.
Yeah.
But that's the idea behind the theory.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously that's very hard to do with the internet and Facebook, you know?
Yeah, because I think people just want to get their 2 cents out and then run away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think they're necessarily interested in having a dialogue or hearing what the other person has to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and also if you are personally a 10, you're not going to
well,
put...
I am a 10.
So... Oh my God. I know you are, Danny. No, I get it. You think you're hot stuff.
I got you.
I get it. But if you're a 10, you're going to put out an argument that is a 10, that is true to exactly what you believe.
Right.
You're not going to specify it for a specific person. As opposed to, like, if you're talking to someone in person, so, like, if I was talking to a radical conservative in person, then I would cater it a little more, or hopefully I would find out more about them in order to cater it specifically to them.
Yeah, I think my headphones are just doing their thing, but so let's try it.
Okay.
Try to do it this way.
Awesome.
I think one of the
The
biggest
hair
issues...
don't quit. The hair don't quit.
Oh, no. Okay.
You're fine.
Okay.
You're fine, boo. We're going to get hair and
This
makeup
is for
in
you,
here.
Mom. I think one of the biggest problems with having these conversations, I don't think that we necessarily see the humanity. So even though you may be conservative, I mean, yeah, you're still a human and you were still raised. You still have to, you know, and so I think that we have to find the similarities, and then over time, your experiences are kind of what determines, you know, what you most align with, right? And so I think that if you approach it from a very humanistic perspective, you can find that commonality. And I think people typically, when you're extreme, you think that they're completely opposite of you, you know? And so that's why you're like bashing them.
You're talking about finding common ground.
Yeah, or just being able to get someone to think. I think the way that you get someone to kind of adopt your principles or your beliefs is by finding the commonality and growing from that versus, you know, focusing on the differences, right? Honey versus vinegar. Yeah.
Well, and not to mention my communication degree again.
Oh my goodness.
But one of the things I learned, okay, I just have a degree in this, okay? That's the
Your
only
whole
reason.
degree's in communication?
No, I have another one in film, but I just, you know, it's a big part of how I think.
Okay, well, I have a degree in biology.
Yeah, and you're great at that. I think. Actually, I've never experienced that firsthand, and I don't know how I would.
It doesn't matter.
But another thing that I learned is, like, if your goal in a debate is to humiliate, destroy, or defeat the person you're having a conversation with, you've already lost.
Right.
Because that person is going to they're not going to feel the respect, and they're going to walk away. Yeah. And if you do want to have a successful debate, you want to listen, understand, and educate. Like those should be your intentions.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's hard to do, especially when back to our other question about, you know, should you respect someone who doesn't necessarily respect you? If your opponent or not opponent, but if the person you're in a conversation with has their intention is to humiliate, destroy, or defeat you, and Donald Trump has kind of laid the groundwork for all of his followers to think that way and to speak that way and to talk that way. How do you then engage with those people? And or should you to begin with?
Yeah,
you know?
I think I have a different moral background, right? So in that sense, I think that I should respect anybody. It's not just a matter of what you can give or how you talk to me. It's just like, no, I'm going to respect you because you're a human being, right? But I don't have to necessarily entertain your mess. You know? I mean, simply put, you know, so I think that there's, I definitely think that you should respect them by all means, but I think that there are certain levels of conversations that you can have with people, and if they're completely not receptive, then you just have to stop and you just say, okay, that's what you believe and that's what I believe, and we'll move on, you know? So
yeah,
but I think that I would still try my best to respect them, right?
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that I always remind myself is that this one person did not determine the election.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
this was a huge mass effort. You know, it was a mass message, and everyone responded in their own way to the Clinton campaign, to the Trump campaign, and made their decision in the end.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're going to take a quick break,
Mhm.
and when we come back, we are going to have Ian Gary come on, and he's going to give us some of his thoughts on this subject.
Yeah.
Yes. And welcome back. We have Ian Gary with us.
Hi.
Welcome, Ian.
Hey, buddy.
I am beyond excited
I know.
to have you here.
You're so sweet.
No,
I go on real quickly. You are
Yeah.
a shining light. It does not surprise me that this is your podcast because you're the most positive, sweet
oh my God,
ray of sunshine of a person.
Goodness. And his head goes.
No, but it's true because there's a lot of people. I'll get this out, and you seem like a delight yourself. So I don't want to. I don't want to be a slag. Just pass that knee touch along.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people that I feel like can do like cashier pleasantry, where it's like, oh, they seem pleasant and nice, and what a little ray of sunshine just walked out of there. But you're so genuinely sweet, and I think the world of you. I think you're a delight.
Aww.
So I'm honored to be here.
Oh my God. Well, it's funny because when we started this podcast, you know, the title is Smart Enough. And, you know, I had all these insecurities about starting a podcast because I would scroll through Facebook and I'd be like, I shouldn't have a podcast. This guy should have a podcast. This guy should have. You're one of the guys where I was like, this guy needs a podcast because I just think you're so ingenious.
You're far too kind.
And I think it's perfect that you're here for this topic because this is all about engaging with Trump supporters and engaging with the other side.
Right.
And you are someone who is... we talked about in the first episode people who identified with the SNL Well skit, and you just mentioned during the commercial break that you identified with that.
Sensitive boys.
Yeah, you're perfect for what this is, so I'm just so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
So I wanted to talk to you about like, how do you mentally do? Because you literally go at it. Every issue there is, you've got a status about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I do deal with it, honestly. Like, towards the end of last year, there was, I took like a huge break because I could feel myself going a little crazy. And then you re-engage it. And towards the end of last year, like after the election and everything, I got top 5, and I'm a pretty depressed person. This was top 5 most depressed I've ever been in my life. So I don't know that I do deal with it, and that's a thing I've been talking about with a therapist a lot. Is trying to find a balance, because I was always raised to be very politically aware and engage those kind of things, and to have opinions, and that stuff is important, to be present in that way, and to watch the news and all that stuff. But I feel like there's got to be some balance that gets struck, because when at least for me, when I was growing up, it was like you had the news and the internet was not a thing yet, and so there's a cutoff. And now it's this constant feed of stuff. And so it's kind of on you when to cut that off. And I'm just now learning that.
Oh my God, that's an episode all in itself.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But it's a genuine challenge, because I feel bad if I don't stay up to date with everything at the moment. I'm like, I'm being an irresponsible citizen.
Right.
But it's like, but you have to not drive yourself insane. Like,
Right.
your brain is literally not evolved to handle that amount of information constantly. So
and you know what's so
tough.
funny? I always just like, I wish I could just share Ian Gary's timeline. Like, I wish I could just like,
oh my goodness.
I just want to share every single like thing.
You must be a great guy, huh?
I must
Yeah.
be.
Okay,
I must
see,
be.
okay, and I'll explain this to our viewers at home. Danny does not engage in Facebook
Good.
at all.
Good. Smart.
She
Smart
is
cookie.
she is actually an 80-year-old woman
76.
on the inside
Yeah.
who we often refer to as Mabel. So if viewers at home, if you ever hear or see us refer to her as Mabel, that's why.
I'll just say, if there was a litmus for what's the better idea, she's not the one drinking on your podcast.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
Yeah, it's self-preservation, you know?
Yeah.
There's just a lot of stuff on there. And my roommates tease me because they say I sneak on Facebook. I don't really sneak on, you know?
Yeah. That's
but
good.
I do have it just in case.
Do you lurk?
She hasn't even.
I have to find someone.
She hasn't even accepted me as a friend. Just
Because
so
in real
everybody
life-
knows, like
because in
we
real
are
life I've
actually
accepted
not
you.
friends.
In real life, I've accepted you. That's what matters.
Right?
Yeah,
Right.
That's how this works.
We're Instagram friends.
We are. But anyways, back to the topic. Have you found like what is the most effective argument when talking to people? I know that's kind of a very broad question.
Yeah.
Because like everyone is different.
I haven't, and part of it is I have shortcoming. Like I was thinking about it when you guys were talking about it, of like wanting to win,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a definite shortcoming in my personality. I try to not be that person,
Mm-hmm.
but there is very much a part of me that wants to pin that person down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting now that there's this weird cultural shift on the right of going, nuh-uh. And I think that's part of what's driving me a little crazy, is because there is, to me, on most things, generally facts.
Right.
There are things that are true and not true, and then you can feel however you want to feel about the things that are true
and now
not
there
true.
are alternative
Yeah.
facts too.
And that is
That's what Kelly.
beyond terrifying.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I would say when I'm at my best version of myself,
Mm-hmm.
empathy has worked the best for me personally, to the point of insanity, of just being like, that doesn't matter that you said that. I'm going to try and be nice to you. And it has given me far more in return being that person.
Mm-hmm.
I am not always that person. And I don't know that it works all the time. But generally speaking, for most people, I feel like that's the key.
Yeah, I've actually noticed that shift in you.
I've
like
tried very hard.
you're like grabbing the desk. Well, and I mentioned it in the last episode where it's actually easier for me to debate people online because I can, when someone says something that gets me like fired up, I can kind of like scream into my pillow and then compose myself and like type up a perfectly well-reasoned response and be like, I'm so sorry that like you have faced those troubles underneath an Obama administration, but this president made fun of a disabled reporter, or like whatever it is, whatever the debate is at that time. And it's very frustrating. I don't know how to have that in person.
It's funny because I feel like you're probably the exception to the rule. I think part of the reason why discourse has fallen down the tubes as far as it has, or feels like it has, is because so much of that stuff does happen online, right? And it's easier to make a person not a person when they're just writing on a screen. I know me personally, if I interact with somebody that I don't know and they're just a picture and it's this thing, it is far easier for me to be more arrogant and more confrontational and more dismissive. If I was sitting at a table with that person, I'd be like, well, I would try and find a way to be more polite about it.
Yeah.
Because it's when you see a person in front of you, you make them a person.
Right.
That's strange.
Right.
So you were saying that, and this is not, I'm not going to try to make this a therapy session, but you said that it became one of the most depressing times for you because of the election. Is that what? Okay.
A lot of things.
Oh,
but
okay.
The election certainly is a contributing factor. Yeah.
And so what was it that bothered you, especially as a white male?
Yeah, well, I think that's a big part of it, is that there's this, I hate using kind of liberal cultural buzzwords, but this national gaslighting that, again, it's like if you have an attachment to facts, it becomes furious, where aggressors are made to be victims and everything is the flip side of it. And there is such a straight white person approach. If I hear one more person say wait and see, I'm going to smash my head into red mist. I don't know what this thing, because it is a very easy straight white person thing to stand on the side of the train tracks and go like, I know you hear the train coming, but wait and see what happens. You're being ridiculous. Wait for it to hit you.
Right.
It's a guy that ran a nonstop campaign of bigotry and xenophobia and out paranoia and hatred. Out and out. And then it becomes this debate now where you interact with people and they go, no, it wasn't. He made fun of a handicapped reporter. No, he didn't.
Yeah.
He made fun of a war veteran. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
He said that Mexicans are rapists and murderers. You're taking that out of context.
Right.
I'm really not. I'm really fucking
Right,
not.
right.
And that becomes the thing where it's so tough. And from an empathy standpoint, it's like it's tough to give empathy to people that display none. I won't say that they have none.
Totally.
But it's tough.
Oh yeah, it definitely requires a certain level of personal discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and what was traumatizing for me, and I know just simply by using the word traumatizing that makes me a snowflake.
Right.
But what's traumatizing for me hey Jay, you love that. But what's traumatizing for me is like, I watched all of the Republican debates, all of them in entirety. And you watch the other ones and I was like, oh, Rand Paul has some like genuine idea. He like really seems to understand economic policy. And like there were some real options up there who like, certainly had flaws, but they knew their shit. And when I was shocked and dismayed, not surprised that Donald Trump won the Republican nomination, because I feel like Republicans have kind of always subtly played the racism card and subtly played those things. And now here's someone blatantly playing them, and he's getting the vote. And I expressed, remorse for my Republican friends who I knew had lost their party, and I was like, oh, well, now I know that my good Republican friends won't vote for this man, right? But then they did, and so I think
No, you can go. Keep going.
I think and I wonder, and this happened with Clinton supporters too, is that, they had to latch on to him because Clinton supporters would be like, okay, like now you have to vote this way. And they, God, what am I saying here? But just basically like not wanting to be wrong.
Yeah.
So like you want to like feel good
that's everybody.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be
wrong.
And it is it is not strictly a conservative thing. Like the amount of times I talk with liberals and it's like you are literally inventing a reality. But there does seem to be, because I come from a semi-libertarian perspective on stuff, so I've always kind of seen both sides as a little silly. But I would be lying if I gave it equal equivalency. It does feel like something has changed in the right in the past 10 years or so, where it is a aggressive shift to, the example I kind of go to is like, under Obama, they said that all these jobs were created. Well, a bunch of full-time jobs were lost, and then a bunch of people had to get two part-time jobs to make up for it. That's not creating jobs. That's people replacing full-time jobs with shittier part-time jobs.
Right.
That's a Democrat lie or a liberal lie. A Republican lie is going, the Clintons are running a pedophilia ring out of a pizza shop.
Right. Oh my
God.
God.
it is a false equivalency
right,
to compare. One is like politics as usual, and the other one is, wait, what the fuck? Like that is what's happening now.
Right.
And it's tough to engage in that. Like I said, when you talk to somebody and they go like, nuh-uh.
So,
do
either one of you all think anything positive can come from Trump's presidency?
Maybe.
I will say this. I will say, now that this kind of political correctness is gone or whatever, like basic human decency, so is white fragility.
Right.
Like if we're not going to tiptoe around the feelings of like gay people and black people, if you're not going to do that for us, then I'm not going to tiptoe around you being white and fragile and like never having left this country, or, never having left your city, or
I think, like,
whatever it is.
A big part of it is, and this has been a long thing. There, ironically, like this started. You brought me on the worst day because I think my empathy is at an all-time low.
Great,
but it's been kind of like a 3-year project for me. Seriously, of the first thing. Actually, I put it on my phone here. Yeah. In attempting to hear the other side of stuff, I remember going and reading this like Christian website, and it was about empathy and truly acting like Jesus. And there was this quote that somebody wrote, and it was I'm paraphrasing it, but it was like, the beast isn't loved because it's changed. The beast is changed when it's loved. And he's talking about the beast being like the lesser part of your nature. And I remember being hit really hard with it, being like, oh, fuck. And so anytime somebody was the most aggressive to me, I would try to be the most loving towards it. So it's tough, but I think the other part of empathy is having empathy for yourself and going like, yeah, if I lose my shit because I've tried my hardest, that's also okay. Because I usually would be the first to beat myself up if I lost my temper with somebody.
Yeah.
But then you go, well, you know, I think part of the empathy, if you're working on that as a person, is to have it for yourself at the times that you lose it. You can't use it as an excuse.
Right.
But it's important to have it for yourself, too, I think.
And I also, when I'm getting into the discussions online, they do try and bait me, you know, or like the other side will try and bait me like, well, you're such a liberal snowflake that, you know, da-da-da-da-da. And I find that, like, you know, it does, like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to, like, fight back on that. But I find if I'm going to ignore that part. I'm going to respond to, like, what your argument actually was. And, like, just look at this logically, even though it's laced with kind of venom and kind of all those types of things.
Yeah.
Have you ever changed someone's mind? Like, has that ever, like, I know, because we talk about, you very rarely see the success of these conversations.
I have one, and it ties right into the empathy thing, which is what I try and remember. But it's one of those things where you're like, oh, you date my friend from high school? Sure, we're friends, right? And
sure,
during the whole Freddie Gray Baltimore stuff, I didn't realize how many people from where I grew up with are at least tacitly okay with racism, from my perspective. But there was a particular gentleman who didn't soften anything. It was the most egregiously venomous racist thing I've ever encouraged in my life. Literally being like, talking about somehow I got to welfare. I was like, I don't care if these monkeys die in the street. You're like, oh my God. Like the from what I saw, worst person I had ever encountered.
Yeah.
The picture that he had was holding a gun. It was like, take my gun, Obama. It was insane.
Yeah.
And I tried really hard to engage this person. And I just was like, okay, we've talked about the race stuff for long enough. I'm just telling you that what you're saying it's not normal. It's not healthy to speak about people that way. You can say there's nothing wrong. There's something wrong. The message you send out to the world is a gun pointed at somebody. And I'm just telling you that's odd.
Yeah.
Right. And then, he came to me privately and was like, I've always had rage issues, and this has been a problem. We've maintained a dialogue now for probably about a year.
Wow.
And over that year, he was like, yeah, I mean, I looked at it and I'm a racist, and I don't want to be that thing anymore.
Wow.
And I try to remember that because, I mean, when I read that, I bawled. You know what I mean? Because you see a shift in a person in 2 years, and somebody goes like, yeah, the things I was saying are indefensible.
I think that's something I have recently learned, and I think that is the key to everything. Is just you're never going to change someone by one interaction. I think you have to develop relationships with these people, right? You have to get to know who they are. And so if you don't feel like you want to put the time or energy into getting to know this person that has a completely different viewpoint from you, your message is never going to get through.
Right.
You know, and so you have to decide, okay, I'm going to do life with you. And I think that within that time, I'm going to help, we're going to grow from each other, right? And we're going to be able to figure out, okay, you know, I should think this way, or this is not healthy, or these are, I learned these lessons subconsciously through how my parents raised me, or, you know, because I think that's that's how you affect change.
And that was part of, and I know we're running over at this point, but that was part of the discussion that we had that was so profound. And I try to remember. That's one of the things that he said to me was, he was like, you have to understand, I was raised, my parents were racist.
Yeah.
And I was taught this every day from the day that I was born. Fuck them.
Right.
They're everything that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I am literally having to reprogram my brain to not have this instinct at every turn. And I say this with all due respect to that person.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine what a hurdle that is to overcome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
To be raised and steeped in something,
Yeah.
and then have to fight your way out of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a challenge, and
Totally.
that I think you need to remember things like that when engaging what might appear to be the worst.
Yeah.
And I'll
But,
also
yeah.
say to that effect, and then we'll jump to obsessions. But don't defriend people. Like
Mhm.
it. I know if you are psychologically attacked and like you are going through it and just can't put up with it. If I was in Georgia, I certainly would have to create my own safety bubble.
Right.
But if you're somewhere in California, you're fine. You can deal with that one Trump supporter just for you to be exposed to the reality of the world,
Mhm.
and also in your instance to hopefully change
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
So we're gonna jump to obsessions. Ian, how this goes, and for viewers at home, one thing that you are purely obsessed with this week. It has to be pure joy.
Oh my gosh.
It can't be negative in any way.
No
And
negativity.
this is to bring us out of kind of, because obviously these conversations
heavy.
get kind of heavy, so
Yeah.
we want to like end on a lighter note. Danielle, do you have an obsession this week?
Yeah, I have this red robe at home.
Okay.
My roommate absolutely hates it because it evokes pure joy, and so when they're not in the mood, they don't want to see the robe. So I put my robe on, and I tie it up with some pizzazz, and then I sing a song. I find a song to sing,
Sing it.
and I walk through the house.
You wrap it up like a little Christmas
I
bell?
wrap it up like a yep. Just
Is red your
I'm-
favorite color? Because you're wearing it today.
at one point in my life, I would have said that.
Okay. What is it now? Green? I feel like you're a green.
No, I'm not. My mother's a green.
Mm.
I'm not
Ah.
a green though. I think I would say red and
Okay.
orange.
Okay.
Probably more so
Yeah,
red.
Cool.
Fiery colors.
Ian, do you have an
I
obsession?
didn't know it was limited to the week. This is a lifetime.
Oh,
obsession
well,
for me.
I mean, go ahead.
Oh,
you're
yeah, do
you're only
you.
here for, so like, I mean,
Yeah.
share it. you know?
I'm a bona fide professional wrestling fan.
Oh my goodness.
Love it with a passion and a shame
Yes.
Uh-huh.
that is like nothing. And I've had long stretches where I haven't,
Mm-hmm.
and then but I always
you
come back
always
to
come
it.
back.
And right now I'm in a full kick of loving it. There's no other art like it. It's
Right.
part carnival barker, part
Uh-huh.
like stunt show,
Mm-hmm.
part
Yes.
morality play, part it is I know you said not negative. 85% of it is hot fucking garbage. It's the worst. But there's like 15% that's really riveting.
Right.
Oh
I've
my
I've
gosh.
cried from watching wrestling.
No,
That's
you
amazing.
haven't.
Yes.
Is
Ric
does that
Flair versus
include-
Shawn Michaels in a retirement match. I cried like a
Oh
baby.
my
Oh my
god!
goodness.
I love it. I love
Lo-
it so
unabashed
much.
obsession.
Little Rakishi in there? Or?
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god!
Mm.
So my obsession this week is, and Aziz Ansari stole it from me.
Oh, he's
last
great.
last night.
What'd he steal from you?
Black Mirror.
I know he did say
He
that.
said it in his sketch, and I was like,
Mhm.
now I've got to change it, but I'm not changing it.
Mhm.
I've just discovered the show, and it's perfect for, I feel like, the viewer or
Yeah.
listener for this. Like, it's so deep thinking. It's very Orwellian.
Wow.
And it's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night anyways. And then I found this show and I was like, I feel like I created, I'm not going to take credit for the show, but like,
Well, he just took credit for the show.
Wow, Alex.
no, but I feel like I put the secret out there somehow, like something like with the secret, and like
Yeah.
the universe just responded. They're like,
Mhm.
here
They
you
picked
go,
it up.
here you go. It's Black Mirror.
Mhm.
Like, watch it.
It is a
Here
very
you go.
intense.
Here's a prime minister fucking a pig.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a great. It's
literally
a good show.
the first one.
It's a good. It's
You've
a good.
seen it?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I
good.
mean, I yeah.
Oh,
I
good.
have.
AJ, how are we doing? We're good. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, Ian.
Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
thanks, Ian.
I mean, this is
Really
really
appreciate it.
incredible.
Yeah.
I forgot our number. Let me look it up real fast.
Oh, that's good. That's a nice pickup
That's
line.
a nice pickup line. But if you have any questions or comments about this episode, you guys still can. Well, you can still respond to last week's, but because we film on Sundays and then we release the episodes on Wednesdays, so it's a little. I always feel weird about because they can call up until Wednesday,
You can
People
call
just
whenever you
call.
want.
Just
Yeah.
call.
He's
Call
very
whenever you
Just
want.
accommodating.
call.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our number is 323-642-7905. Once again, that's 323-642-7905. And remember that even when you're not feeling smart enough, if we cannot have a conversation, you can certainly have one too. Thanks for tuning in. Do you want to say anything,
No,
Danielle?
I don't.
Okay,
You
that's it.
finished it off.
I just,
Guys, please call. We would love to hear
Yes.
your comments and your concerns
And-
and your interests because
Yes.
that's what's going to drive.
And
Our little
AJ,
shindig.
where can they find the podcast?
They can find it on YouTube,
Mhm.
the Smart Enough podcast channel.
Great.
They can find it on SoundCloud.
Great.
Same Smart Enough podcast channel. And in a couple days, you'll be able to find it on iTunes.
Hey,
Look at that.
Ooh.
That man,
Look at
AJ.
y'all.
That
He
man,
is
AJ, he
something
gets it
else.
done.
He is something else.
Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you next week.
Asta.
Cool. Thank you. That was so
Nice.
perfect.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
That was really fun, guys.
It was nice and meaty.
Right?
It was a good meaty. I like that.